Welcome to the Chairman's Perspective Podcast.
Welcome to the Chairman's Perspective. I'm your host, Chairman Mark Billingsley. This show is for you, and it's all about your Shelby County government. Today, we're going to talk about protecting our aquifer. Today, we're very honored to have Ward Archer with us. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right here on the Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The Chairman's Perspective.
What children are seeing are gun violence, domestic violence, community violence, violence among the young people themselves in school and in their community.
On the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Welcome back to the Chairman's Perspective. I am really honored today to have a major community leader with us today. Certainly a public servant who has worked on behalf of all the citizens of Shelby County, who has a rich history of leadership in Memphis and Shelby County. Today, I'm very honored to welcome my friend Ward Archer. Ward, thank you for being here today.
I'm really happy to be here. It's a timely time to talk.
It is time to talk. And Ward, you've worn so many hats over the years. Will you just share just briefly a little bit of your background?
Well, maybe I could just tell how I got into the whole water thing.
That'd be great.
Okay, I was running this ad agency called Ultramamo, which is still going today. I retired from there in the early 2000s, and one day my phone rang, and it was the Wolf River Conservancy, which at the time was very small, and they were in a panic because a logging company had bought 400 acres of land at the headwaters of the Wolf River, and they were going to clear cut it, and they wanted someone to buy it. And it was $4 million. And they said, "Ward, can you raise $4 million?" I said, "I think that's over my head, but I know who can." And I connected them with Scott Ledbetter, who had just led the zoo campaign back in those days.
Sure.
But part of the thing was, well, they took us out for a tour, and we went out to the very start of the Wolf River. It's called Baker's Pond, and we were walking around the pond, and it was really sandy. And I asked myself, why is it so sandy here? There's no soil. It's just sand. And they explained, this is where the Memphis sand aquifer comes to the surface. This is the recharge area. And I said, well, tell me about the aquifer. And then we got all into that. And on the way home, it was about a 45-mile trip, I started thinking about how much water there is under Memphis. And I started studying it. And then I just sort of got really into it. And I was asked by Memphis Magazine to write a long-form feature about the aquifer in like 2004. And I spent a year researching it, talking to every water professional and people at TDAC, MLGW, and so forth. And so I had done my homework on the aquifer, and I knew everything. When this, fast forward to 2016, when TVA was, they were beginning to build a new gas plant, and they had planned to use wastewater to cool the plant. And unbeknownst to the public, they changed their plans and sort of, in the dead of night, applied for 5 well permits to tap the Memphis sand aquifer to cool the plant. And that's when the Sierra Club filed an appeal against those wells. And then we were told that the first strategy of TVA is going to be to dismiss this based on the standing of the Sierra Club, because their main headquarters is in California. And we were advised to start a local group, and that was me. And I had to find 10 people who were willing to be on a lawsuit, which I was able to do, thank goodness. And we started it, and I thought we would be done in 9 months or something. I thought we'd be gone away. And it took 2 years, and we went all the way to federal court. It was dismissed on a technicality. And then very shortly after that, TVA had to announce that the groundwater below the coal ash ponds was contaminated. And they had built these wells right across the street. So it's like most of these things, it was a common sense issue. Fortunately, TDAC, we were able to persuade TDAC to get involved, and they ordered TVA do a pump test where they turned on the wells, and they put in monitoring wells in the coal ash pond to see if it was going to draw down the contaminants. And sure enough, it did. It was an immediate drawdown. So then they were ordered to not use the well. Wow. So we lost in court but won the war.
Well, Ward's, I mean, it's absolutely amazing how you've lent your expertise and background. I know how humble you are, but you graduated from Rhodes in 1974, co-founded Cotton Row Records back in the 70s and 80s. You've been an author, CEO of Archer Malmo, which is absolutely a household name to this day. And now you've taken on, you're now serve as president of Protect Our Aquifer. I think it's really interesting how the water issue in our aquifer has permeated from North Memphis, South Memphis, Germantown, downtown. It's the signs come up almost every day: protect our aquifer, protect this natural resource. And so I'm so happy to have you here on the Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network today. How did that grassroots effort and your leadership lead to the type of engagement that I'm now seeing across this community? I'll go into the grocery store, being an elected official, and I'll have young people stop me. I'll have senior citizens stop me. I'll have educators stop me and say, Commissioner Billingsley, stand behind our water. Don't let them permeate our aquifer. How did it grow to the grassroots efforts as it has so far? It just continues to get stronger and stronger and stronger.
That's right. During that 2-year period when we were battling with TVA, all of these other issues started popping up. One of which was the former Custom Cleaners site at 3517 Southern Avenue, right there at Southern and Highland. There's a big plume of PERC, which is basically dry cleaning fluid.
I know exactly where you're talking about.
Yeah. And that's now a Superfund site. And, these things take forever to get cleaned up. Yeah. And maybe what really got us more into the neighborhoods was this, there were like 4 or 5 attempts to put construction landfills in the Wolf River floodplain. And, the Wolf River is connected to the aquifer in some places. And first of all, we need all the floodplain we can get. We don't need to be filling it up with construction landfill. But secondly, those things will, once they get saturated with water, they begin to pollute and they release dangerous chemicals into the water. So probably the most notable one was the Nutbush neighborhood. And we went down there to help them. And they were trying to slam this thing through. And one of the things that's come forward as a problem is they go to the Land Use Control Board, and they don't consider the environment there. They leave it all up to TDAC. So this thing will go through the Land Use Control Board, maybe City Council, and then it goes to the state. So we were able to get the neighborhood really engaged in that, and they did not want that dump. And it would have been a bad thing, not only for the neighborhood, but for the city because of the flooding. And that's just one way. And then this thing in Collierville Tuesday night was a really big event.
All right, let's put a pin in that. We're going to be right back on the Chairman's Perspective with Ward Archer, president of Protect Our Aquifer.
The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
I'm Cynthia Daniels, host of Grind Set. Are you looking to start a business? Do you need tips on how to scale up? Get it on Grind Set. On this show, our guests will keep you listening. What's your Grind Set? If you happen to miss some of our episodes, make sure you check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast provider.
Grind Set on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN.
And we're back on the Chairman's Perspective. We're with Ward Archer today, who's the president of Protect Our Aquifer. When we left it at the last segment, Ward, we were talking about the gathering that just recently happened in Collierville, Tennessee. I could not get over how many people came to that event. Tell me a little bit about that event and what happened.
Well, there are 2 Superfund sites right next to each other in Collierville that have been known about for 30 plus years. Our meeting Tuesday night was about the carrier plants plan to change the way they're cleaning up the water. You know, they're under an EPA mandate to clean up the water that they contaminated with TCE, which is trichloroethylene. I finally learned how to say that. And their new plan involves pulling the water out, cleaning it up, and instead of sending it to the wastewater treatment plant where they used to send it, or presently are, they want to re-inject it back into the aquifer, and we think that's a terrible, terrible idea. One of the things that makes us unique here is that most of the water, not all of it, but most of the water that's in the aquifer is 2,000 years old.
Wow.
Which means that's before plastics, before microplastics, these things called PFAS, which are out there now, everyone's talking about. And it's really, really good stuff. And why would you want to pollute that with something that's not 2,000 years old and not anywhere near as clean and pure? So that's and it turns out that where Shelby County is situated, this was explained to me by the former head of MLGW, Jerry Collins, that we are on top of the bathtub of the aquifer. It's very deep here, so we have a lot of water, and the aquifer does recharge. Where some of the ones in the further west don't recharge.
You know, Ward, we started out down the road so fast on this show. For someone who's new or not as familiar with the Memphis Sands Aquifer, can you somewhat simplify it? I mean, you really are an expert, but for a young person listening, or even for myself who may not be as familiar with the natural resource we have here, how can you simplify it so we can understand the importance of the Memphis Sands Aquifer and what it does for us, and what hopefully it will do for many more hundreds of years if we protect it?
Well, there are many kinds of aquifers. Many in the United States are what they call karst aquifers, and those recharge very quickly. Like if it rains at night, the water's going to be in the aquifer the next morning. That's the way it is in San Antonio. Water doesn't taste very good, but it's down there. Here, ours was formed with this large formation called the Mississippi Embayment, which is where many millions of years ago the ocean used to come up all the way to Cairo. And when it receded, it left all this sand and these layers of clay. And so this sand is a coarse sand. This is the part that's just amazing. Because the sand is coarse, meaning it's got larger particles than like sand you would find on the beach,
right? Water
can move through it and it becomes saturated. If it wasn't coarse, the whole thing wouldn't work, but it does work. And what's even better about it is that down around, and this is depending on where you are in Shelby County, there's the upper aquifer, which is where the rain goes, straight in. And then there's a layer of clay which seals off what we call the Memphis Sand Aquifer. And that's how it's protected, although we are finding places where there is no clay layer. And there's a study going on now to identify those. But when it was first tapped back in 1870-something, it was under artesian conditions, meaning it was under pressure, so the water shot up out of the ground. And it still does that in some parts of Shelby County. But basically the water in Shelby County, most of our water comes into the ground out at the end of the Wolf River and in Fayette County, and it moves, and I believe it moves like an inch a day.
Right.
East to west, so it's coming this way, and so it took thousands of years for it to get where it is, and we want to preserve the good stuff and keep all the sins of the 50s and 60s where people dumped chemicals and so forth. We want to keep that out of it, as best we can.
If you just tuned in, we're talking with Ward Archer, who's the president of Protect Our Aquifer, well-known, very, very successful businessman in our community, but who's really made his mission to protect our natural resource, probably our best natural resource in Memphis and Shelby County and in this entire region, the Memphis Sands Aquifer, our water. Recently, Ward, a lot of people have been talking about recent challenges to the aquifer, but also long term. What should my children and their children be worried about? Not only the most immediate threats, but down the road. I mean, how quickly could we spoil the Memphis aquifer, I guess? Without a vision, how do we look forward, I guess, in essence, Ward, to protect it for the future?
Well, first of all, there needs to be more. There needs to be more research done.
Okay.
We have just approved, in the past year or so, the 18 cents a month that we all pay is going to Caesar at the University of Memphis, which is the Groundwater Institute.
Okay.
And they are mapping the clay layer all through Shelby County. So we're going to know, if there's a hole in the clay layer here, don't build a plant next to it, or don't you have to be real careful around those spots. And secondly, there's the sort of in the background, since we've been active, the world seems to be running out of fresh water.
Right.
The largest aquifer in the U.S. is called the Ogallala. It's also called the High Plains Aquifer. They have known for 50 years that aquifer doesn't recharge, or actually very little.
Wow.
And they've been over pumping it, and it's now almost dry. So you have to wonder, where are they going to get water? And that's something that we worry about. And one of the things we would like to see changed in the Shelby County groundwater code is to prohibit water extraction. If you've had a chance to go down to Byhalia, Mississippi, and see the Niagara water bottling plant, it will amaze you at the size of it. It is bigger than like 4 super Walmarts, and there's tractor trailer trucks pouring out of it like a train.
Wow.
And they're filled with water from the Memphis Sand Aquifer, and they're going to Walmarts and other stores all around the country.
We're going to come right back. We're with Ward Archer today. We're talking about the Memphis Sands Aquifer. We'll be right back in just a moment on The Chairman's Perspective.
The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Jazz, America's own original musical art form. When did it start? Who were and are some of the major players? How do you distinguish what kind of jazz you're listening to? We talk about the great and lesser-known artists, songs and tunes, the instruments, and the social impact jazz has had on world culture since its beginning at the start of the 20th century.
Riffin' on jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN!
Welcome back to The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network. Today I'm very honored to have a major advocate with us today, very successful businessman in Memphis and Shelby County, Ward Archer, who is the president of Protect Our Aquifer, which quite frankly has really become a household name in the last number of years. It's really amazing how it's exciting, quite frankly, for me to see young people in schools, high school leaders. I'm a leader at Christian Brothers University, and our university students talk to me at times about environmental issues that they're really worried about. They're getting more and more active. Ward, a lot of this research that you need doesn't come easy. Do you receive any funding from state or federal funds to try to help you with the research we need to protect our aquifer?
We are a 501c3, and which means we're a nonprofit.
Sure.
We have received no federal funds, no grants. We have received a lot of gifts from the public. I remember when we just got started that first time, I came home and someone had put a $5,000 check on my door.
Wow. That's somebody who cares about the future of the aquifer.
And so we're just now trying to organize a fundraising campaign because we do need some staff. This thing has gotten big, and there's a lot to do and a lot to organize, and it's just something that needs to move a little bit beyond the volunteer world, where we have some staff that can do some things.
I'm going to mention this again at the end of the show, but if you want more information about Ward Archer's work and Protect Our Aquifer, you can go to www.protectouraquifer.org. Again, I'm going to repeat that, www.protectouraquifer.org. Again, this organization is nonprofit. They survive on contributions from the public. They're doing very, very important work. I know recently my own Shelby County Commission, which I chair, has drafted a resolution relative to supporting the Memphis Sands Aquifer, and I know that's under more consideration. Ward, for groups that want to get more active in this fight, how do you need their help? I know certainly every nonprofit organization needs financial support, but how can individuals listening today who are passionate about our water source here in Shelby County, how do they actively get involved, and what can they do?
Well, I can tell you what we did at the Collierville public meeting, which was Tuesday night, and we had, I don't think many citizens out there were aware of the extent of the contamination.
Right.
So they came, we had a presentation. We are very fortunate to be represented by the Southern Environmental Law Center. They were there, they made a presentation as well. And when it was over, we gave everyone who was there, talking points, and we gave them a contact list of officials to communicate with. And the main contact they need to get to the carrier executives, who I don't know that they're in Shelby County. So that's a very important thing. When, as you know, when you start getting emails in your inbox about something, you probably pay attention to it, and that's the best thing you can do. The yard signs, I think, are a great way to demonstrate that there is support for this and that we do believe in it. And, we're basically, standing up for our water.
Right.
So there is a place to sign up to volunteer on our website, protectouraquifer.org. Another place to go to get the most current information really is our Facebook group page.
Okay.
And that's, you can just type in Protect Our Aquifer and it'll show you where to go. And there's a lot of ongoing discussion. We try to keep it civil and all. We have struggled with whether or not we should get involved with pipelines. But this latest pipeline that they're wanting to build from the Valero plant down through southwest Shelby County and then across DeSoto and Marshall County to the Capline pipeline just outside of Collierville, we really think that's an unnecessary endeavor. It's for exporting oil. I've been to all the public meetings. I can tell you that this is crude oil. It's being pumped at 1,500 psi, that's a high pressure pipeline. Which no wonder they break. And it's going right over our aquifer. Right. And we think that it's a pipeline that's not necessary. It does not serve us. It's not going to produce gasoline for Shelby County. It's going to be exported. And we're trying to get past oil. Why do we want to be involved with that? So we've sort of we're helping those who are opposed to it, and we're sort of formulating how and if we could stop it. I mean, they're very difficult. They have this thing called a nationwide permit 12, which allows you to just burn through a neighborhood,
Well, if you're just now tuning in, we've had a great conversation today with Ward Archer. He's the president of Protect Our Aquifer. Ward, let me ask you this. Are there any type of annual or biannual meetings just for groups that want to come in to learn more about the aquifer? Are there club meetings monthly, or do you have annual gatherings because it looks like our constituents throughout Shelby County are very interested in this issue. Any type of lectureships, or is that something that might be on the horizon?
Well, we have had public meetings, and we plan to have more. We had one at the Whitehaven Library about 3 months ago, and we had this public meeting in Collierville.
Okay.
Just February 25th, and we will have more. We also often have a public meeting in conjunction with the Groundwater Institute, CSER, at the University of Memphis. We try to be a very science-based organization. We don't like to say things unless we really know that there's truth to it and that there's science there. And so there will be more public meetings. And if they'll sign up for the special alerts on the website, or you can follow them on Facebook as well.
Very good. Well, again, Ward Archer, a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you for what you're doing for our environment. I'm going to encourage listeners to check out www.protectouraquifer.org. Also, go to Protect Our Aquifer on Facebook. Get in touch with this organization if you care about the environment. I know we'll probably have you on the show in the coming months as issues arise with our aquifer. But again, the very best of luck. And if I can ever be of service, or the Shelby County Commission can be of service, we want to partner with you.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Ward Archer. We'll be right back on the Chairman's Perspective.
And I'm so tired of everybody bringing up Michael Jordan when they start talking about how great LeBron James is. You got a whole generation of folks ain't never seen Michael Jordan play.
R&R on Sports. Part of the KUDZUKIAN Network.
We've had a great show today, and we hope you know more about the commitment to keep our aquifer safe and the many citizens and leaders like Ward Archer who've made this much more than a hobby by his passion and leadership and expertise. I hope today's show was informative and transformational for you. We'll be back next time. We'll see you right back here on the Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The Chairman's Perspective Podcast. Executive producer, Shelby County Commission's Chairman, Mark Billingsley. Directed, produced, recorded, and distributed by KUDZUKIAN.